Ashbourne, and I'm 25 years old. 2 years ago, I learned that sometimes the person who ruins your life isn't a stranger or an enemy. Sometimes it's the woman who taught you how to walk, who brushed your hair before school, who said she only ever wanted the best for you. Sometimes it's your own mother. Back then, my life looked almost boring from the outside. I lived in Austin, worked as a physical therapist at a sports medicine clinic, and had been dating my boyfriend, David Breslin, for 4 years. We were the kind of couple people described as solid. We paid our bills on time. We meal prepped on Sundays. We talked about rings in a not yet but soon kind of way. For the first time in a long time, my life felt stable, predictable, safe. And then I peed on a stick and everything changed. I still remember sitting on the edge of my bathtub, staring at the 2 pink lines, like my brain had short-circuited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wasn't terrified. Not exactly. It was more like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you'd already jumped. When David got home, I just held the test out to him without saying anything. He stared at it, then at me, then back at it. His voice cracked. We're pregnant, I said softly. 12 weeks, according to the app. For a heartbeat, his face was pure shock. Then he laughed, this disbelieving, wet-sounding laugh, and pulled me into his arms so tight I could barely breathe. We can do this, he whispered into my hair. We're okay, Karina. We're stable. We love each other. We can do this. His certainty was like a life raft. We stayed up half the night, talking about budgets and cribs and daycare and names. It wasn't planned, but it didn't feel wrong. If anything, it felt like the next step we'd been too cautious to schedule. I wish the story could have stayed there, in that apartment, in that warm, hopeful bubble we built that night. The first person we told was my dad, William. He came over with a bag of tacos and left with a grandparent obsession. Ashbourne carpentry will be resurrected, he declared, pacing our tiny living room. I'm converting the garage into a workshop. I'm going to build that baby a cradle the old-fashioned way. Solid oak, something that lasts. He started researching baby books that same night, texting me links to things with titles like The Grandfather's Guide to Not Messing Up Entirely. My dad has always been the soft place in my life, the safe one. My mother was the opposite. When we told Margaret, we went to my parents' house together. I'd rehearsed what I would say on the drive over, trying to frame it like a press release, responsible, measured, calm. Mom, I began, sitting across from her at the dining table. I'm pregnant. David and I are keeping the baby. We're happy about it. There was a small, almost imperceptible pause. Then she set her coffee cup down with a soft click and looked at me like I had admitted to a crime. You're throwing your life away, she said. No congratulations, no surprise, just judgment, sharp and cold. Mom, I'm 25, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We're not teenagers. We're financially stable. We're committed. We've been talking about getting engaged. That's exactly the problem, she snapped. You're not married. What will people think? You're finally building a real career, and now you want to toss it aside for diapers and daycare? After everything I sacrificed to get you here? There it was, that word. Sacrificed. With my mother, it was never just support. It was an investment she expected to control. I'm not tossing anything aside, I said. I want this baby. David wants this baby. That's all that matters. Her eyes flashed. You're ruining everything. Your career, your future, your chances. You have no idea what you're doing, Karina. My mother had always been controlling, but I'd never seen her look at me that way before, like I was something filthy tracked in on the bottom of her shoe. She didn't speak to me for 3 weeks after that. My dad called, apologizing for her like he always did. She'll come around, kiddo, he said. She's just adjusting. This isn't how she pictured things. David's parents, Frank and Diana, reacted like we were handing them winning lottery numbers. They started talking baby showers, spare rooms, college funds. My best friend Natalie organized a little celebration dinner with close friends. My coworkers at the clinic teased that they'd have the baby walking before it could talk. I tried to focus on that, on the love around me, instead of the gaping hole where my mother's approval should have been. Our first ultrasound appointment was indescribable. David held my hand so tightly our fingers went numb. When that grainy little image appeared on the screen and we heard the rapid, fluttering heartbeat, my throat closed. There it was, a tiny, flickering proof that this wasn't just an idea or a problem to solve. It was a life. Later, lying in bed, we whispered baby names into the dark, vetoing each other's worst ideas, and circling back to the same shortlist over and over. I sent my mother a picture of the ultrasound, my thumb hovering over the send button for too long. "Your grandchild," I typed. She answered with one word. "Disappointed." That should have been my warning. Not a crack in the dam, but the first sign the dam didn't actually exist at all. At least that's what it felt like. A sharp, stabbing pain in my lower right abdomen, bad enough to make me double over. At first I thought maybe it was pregnancy-related, I told David, breathless, leaning against the bathroom counter. Maybe just stretching or something. But it got worse, much worse. David didn't argue. He just grabbed his keys and drove me to the emergency room. The ER was fluorescent and cold, that special, sterile kind of cold that seeps into your bones. They took blood, did an exam, ordered imaging. The whole time, my hand kept drifting to my stomach, like I could protect the baby by sheer force of will. A surgeon, Dr. Morrison, finally came in, his face professional, but not alarmed. "You have acute appendicitis," he said. "We need to get your appendix out before it ruptures. The good news is we catch this all the time in pregnant patients. When done carefully, an appendectomy is safe in pregnancy. We'll monitor everything closely." "Will the baby be okay?" I asked, my voice small. "We'll take every precaution," he said. "There's always some risk with anesthesia, but this is much safer than leaving an inflamed appendix untreated. Your baby should be perfectly fine." It should have reassured me. It almost did. I called my parents. My dad was 3 hours away in San Antonio visiting a college friend, but he said he'd drive back immediately. My mother said she'd come straight to the hospital. "I'll be there in 25 minutes, honey," she said, her voice strangely calm. "Don't worry about anything." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. By the time she arrived, I was in a small pre-op room, hooked up to an IV. The pain dulled, but not gone. David sat beside me, thumb tracing circles over the back of my hand. When my mother walked in, she looked composed, not panicked, not frantic, polished, as if she were arriving at a luncheon, not the hospital where her pregnant daughter was about to be wheeled into surgery. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, brushing my hair back from my forehead. "This is why I told you your life was too complicated right now." I didn't have the energy to fight. A nurse came in with a clipboard. "Ms. Ashbourne, we just need you to sign a few consent forms for the appendectomy. Standard procedure. Also, because you'll be under anesthesia, we need you to designate someone to make medical decisions if any complications arise during the surgery." "David can do it," I said immediately, squeezing his hand. The nurse nodded and started to write his name, but my mother cut in. "David isn't family," she said smoothly. "Legally, he can't make medical decisions for her. I'm her mother. It should be me." The nurse hesitated, looking between us. "Legally, it's up to the patient," she said carefully. "It doesn't have to be a blood relative." I felt dizzy, the medication making the edges of the room blur. The pain pulsed through my side like a drumbeat. "Mom, you're not going to have to make any decisions," I said. "It's just a simple appendectomy." "Of course, honey," she said, rubbing my arm. "But just in case. You know I always have your best interests at heart." David's jaw tightened, but he didn't push it. I wish he had. I wish I had. I signed the form, my signature shaky, naming my mother as my medical proxy for the surgery. The anesthesiologist came in and explained what would happen. I nodded along, but I barely heard him. My mother stood in the corner, watching, her expression unreadable. David kissed my forehead. "I'll be right here when you wake up," he whispered. As the medication began to drag me under, I looked over at my mother one last time. She smiled down at me, a small, calm smile. "Don't worry," she said softly. "I'll take care of everything." If I'd been less tired, less trusting, I might have heard the threat hiding inside that promise. Then the world went dark. Coming back to consciousness felt like swimming through wet cement. Sound came first, beeping, the low hum of machines, footsteps in the hallway. Then the smell, antiseptic and plastic, and something metallic underneath it all. My eyelids felt glued together, but I forced them open. White ceiling, harsh fluorescent lights. And then David's face. He was sitting in a chair beside my bed, shoulders curled in, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. His eyes were bloodshot, his cheeks blotchy, like he'd been crying for a long time. Fear cut through the fog faster than any drug. "David?" My voice came out rough, like sandpaper. What happened? Is it over?" He jerked his head up. For a second, raw relief flashed across his face when he saw me awake. "Hey," he whispered, leaning closer. "Yeah, you're okay. The surgery is over." My hand flew to my stomach before he even finished. The baby, I choked out. Is the baby okay? He froze. In that tiny, horrible pause, something inside me shrank. David, my heart started pounding, loud and frantic. Tell me, is the baby okay? He swallowed hard. His eyes filled again, spilling over. Karina. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. I tried. I swear to you, I tried. A cold wave washed over me. The monitors beside the bed started to beep faster. Sorry for what? I demanded, the fog in my brain evaporating under a surge of adrenaline. What do you mean you tried? What happened? Where is my baby? Before he could answer, a nurse walked in, clutching a chart against her chest. She was in her 50s, with tired eyes and a mouth set in a thin line. Her name tag read Sandra. Ms. Ashbourne, she said carefully. You're awake. That's good. The doctor will be in shortly to explain your procedure. My procedure? My voice rose. I had my appendix removed. That's it. I need to know about my baby. Is my baby okay? Sandra's gaze flicked to David, then back to me. For a moment, something like guilt crossed her face. The doctor will explain everything, she repeated, quieter this time. Ice slid down my spine. No, I said, struggling to push myself up. Pain shot through my abdomen, sharp and hot. I hissed, grabbing at the blanket. No. Someone tell me what happened. Right now. David reached for me, gently guiding me back against the pillow. His hands were shaking. Please don't strain, he murmured. You just got out of surgery. David, my voice trembled. Please tell me. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like the words hurt too much to form. A few minutes later, though it felt like hours, Dr. Morrison walked in. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood another man in a white coat, mid-40s, with tight lips and a defensive posture. His name tag read Dr. E. Peyton. The moment I saw the second doctor, my gut twisted. Ms. Ashbourne, Dr. Morrison began, pulling a stool closer to the bed. How are you feeling? Like someone cut me open, I snapped. Tell me what happened. Is my baby okay? He exhaled, and I saw it, the subtle crumbling of his professional mask. He glanced at the other doctor, then back to me. Karina, he said slowly, your appendectomy went smoothly. There were no complications with your appendix. My heart thudded. And my baby? He didn't answer immediately. The room seemed to narrow, the air thickening, pressing in on my chest. Following your appendectomy, Dr. Morrison continued, each word sounding like it was being dragged out of him, an additional procedure was performed by Dr. Peyton here. You underwent a termination. For a moment, I didn't understand. The word hovered in the air, meaningless. Termination. A work contract ends. A lease terminates. Then my brain caught up. No, I whispered. I felt my head turn toward the other doctor, Peyton, almost as if I wasn't controlling my own body. He stood stiffly, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. That's not funny, I croaked. No, I did not consent to that. I signed for an appendectomy. I never... Your mother, Dr. Morrison said, and that's when the world started splitting at the seams. As your designated medical decision-maker, consented to the procedure while you were under anesthesia. For a heartbeat, everything fell silent. Even the monitors seemed to hold their breath. My mother? The words scraped my throat coming out. No, that's... She wouldn't. She knows I wanted this baby. She knows... I'm sorry, he said. She indicated it was medically necessary due to your condition. My mind flailed, trying to grasp onto something that made sense. You told me, I said, my voice rising. You told me appendectomies during pregnancy are safe. You said my baby would be fine. You told me that, remember? Right before surgery. I did, he agreed, guilt clear in his eyes. And the surgery itself went as expected. I was not informed of your mother's intentions until after your appendectomy was complete. By the time I was made aware she'd authorized an additional procedure, it had already been arranged with Dr. Peyton. I stared at Dr. Peyton, my vision tunneling. You killed my baby, I whispered. You killed my baby without my consent. He straightened slightly, the stiffness in his posture turning brittle. I received proper consent from your legal medical proxy, he said, his voice flat. Everything was done according to hospital protocol. Protocol? I choked out a laugh that sounded like a sob. Protocol says you can cut into a conscious, competent woman's body and end her pregnancy without ever speaking to her, without even checking if she agrees. It is standard to accept decisions from a legally designated proxy when complications arise, he replied. Your mother indicated there were serious concerns about your ability to sustain the pregnancy. Concerns she invented, David cut in, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. He stood now, fists clenched at his sides. She waited until Karina was unconscious and then signed whatever she wanted. I told all of you, this is not what Karina wanted. I begged you not to do this. You are not family, Dr. Piton said coolly. You had no legal standing. But I did, I shot back, tears streaming down my face. I was awake before surgery. I was competent. You could have asked me. You should have asked me. I told everyone I wanted this baby. Silence. Sandra, the nurse, hovered near the door, her eyes shiny. She looked like she wanted to speak and couldn't. Where is my mother? I demanded. Where is she? I want to talk to her, right now. David looked away, his jaw clenching. She left, he finally said, right after she signed the forms. She didn't even wait for you to get out of surgery. I tried calling her 18 times. My chest felt like it was caving in. Pain radiated up my ribs, into my throat, behind my eyes. She just left? I repeated, disbelieving. She signs away my baby's life and then just walks out? No one answered. I felt something inside me crack, a deep, wet tear through the center of my chest. This is wrong, I whispered. This is illegal. This has to be illegal. It's complicated, Dr. Morrison said quietly, but you should absolutely speak to a lawyer. I will cooperate fully with any investigation. I want you to know, I did not approve of what happened. I let my head fall back against the pillow, staring up at the ceiling tiles as tears slid sideways into my hair. Complicated. That was the word people use when they don't want to say wrong. Later that night, after the doctors left and Sandra gently adjusted my IV, I asked for my phone. Are you sure you're up for this? David asked softly. I had my baby taken from me while I was unconscious, I said, my voice icy. I think I can handle a phone call. I dialed my dad first. He picked up on the second ring. Karina, how are you? I'm almost there. Traffic's... Dad, I interrupted, my voice breaking. She did it. There was a beat of silence. Who did what? Mom, I forced out. She authorized them to abort my baby while I was in surgery. She didn't tell me. She just signed the papers and left. On the other end, I heard tires screech, as if he'd yanked the car to the side of the road. She did what? He whispered. She killed my baby, Dad, I sobbed. She had them terminate my pregnancy without my consent. For a moment, all I could hear was his ragged breathing. I'm coming, he said finally, his voice hoarse with fury. Don't move. Don't sign anything else. Don't let anyone pressure you into saying this is okay. I'm getting a lawyer. He hung up before I could respond. When he arrived an hour later, he wasn't alone. With him was Gregory, his oldest friend and the closest thing I had to an uncle. They'd already called an attorney on the drive, Victoria Hayes, a medical malpractice and patient rights specialist. David's parents, Frank and Diana, showed up shortly after. Diana's eyes were already red from crying. Frank looked like he could punch through concrete. Where is Margaret? Frank demanded as soon as he saw my dad. She's not answering her phone, my dad said tightly. I've been calling nonstop. We filed a police report that night. The officer who took our statements looked deeply uncomfortable, glancing at the consent forms like they were a live grenade. Because your mother was your designated medical proxy, he said. This may end up being more of a civil matter than a criminal one, but we'll document everything. Sandra stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. I told Dr. Piton something was wrong, she said. Your daughter clearly stated she wanted the pregnancy. Her partner was protesting the procedure. Mrs. Ashbourne insisted it was necessary and that she had legal authority. I wrote my concerns in the chart. Another nurse, younger, with Kayla on her badge, came in after her shift to give a statement too. I overheard your mother on the phone in the waiting room, she told us, eyes wide with regret. She said this was her chance to fix Karina's mistake. Those were her exact words. I didn't think much of it in the moment, but after what happened... I stared at her, numb. Fix my mistake. My baby wasn't a mistake. My mother was. Victoria arrived early the next morning, a stack of files under her arm, and a look on her face that said she'd seen the worst of people before and believed we could win. This is one of the most egregious violations of patient autonomy I've ever heard of, she said after hearing the story. Medical power of attorney is meant for life-saving decisions when the patient can't speak for themselves, not for elective procedures the patient has clearly and repeatedly refused. We're going to sue your mother. We're going to sue the hospital. And we're going to sue the doctor who performed the procedure. Somewhere beneath the pain and the grief, Something cold and sharp settled in my chest. My mother had taken my baby from me. I couldn't get my child back, but I could take everything else from her. And I would. People talk about grief like it's a river you float along, hitting rapids sometimes, drifting others. But mine felt more like a landscape after a wildfire, raw, scorched, and unrecognizable. Every morning, I woke up expecting to feel normal again, and every morning, I remembered. My baby was gone, and my mother had done it. The lawsuit moved fast because Victoria pushed it forward with the kind of controlled fury you only see in someone who has dedicated their life to fighting injustice. She was surgical, precise, relentless, emotionally untouchable in a way I desperately needed someone to be. Still, I wasn't prepared for how brutal the preparation would be. Karina, Victoria told me during our first strategy meeting, the defense will try to paint you as irresponsible, emotionally unstable, unfit to make decisions. We need to dismantle that before they even get the chance. She laid out folders showing my employment record, financial stability, performance reviews from the sports medicine clinic, proof of my long-term relationship with David. You're a responsible adult, she said firmly. You were conscious and competent before the surgery. You clearly expressed your intentions. What your mother did was not protection. It was medical battery. Medical battery. The phrase made my stomach twist. It sounded so clinical, so sanitized, for something that had gutted me from the inside out. Every night for weeks, David and I lay in bed talking through what had happened. He kept replaying the moment they told him he had no legal standing, how he'd argued until security came to escort him out of the hallway. You were unconscious, he whispered once, his voice cracking. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't protect you. I turned to him, holding his face in my hands. You were the only one who tried, I said. None of this is your fault. But even as I said it, I felt a strange guilt coil inside me. Guilt for signing that form, guilt for trusting my mother, guilt for not seeing what she was capable of. Therapy helped. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me words for the pain instead of letting it chew its way through my thoughts. The trial began on a Monday morning. The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon polish and old carpet. Reporters stood outside, already whispering. The story had begun to spread. Texas mother authorizes secret abortion for adult daughter. People love scandals involving mothers, love dissecting them. Inside the courtroom, Margaret sat on the opposite side with her lawyer, a sharp, unsmiling woman in a navy suit. My mother wore pearls and a soft beige blouse, as if she were attending a luncheon. She didn't look at me, not once. She looked at the judge like she expected to be thanked. Victoria leaned over to whisper, "She's going to pretend she's the martyr in this story. Don't let it rattle you." I didn't answer. I couldn't look at Margaret without feeling something tear inside me. Testimony began on day 1. I was called to the stand first. The moment I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth, something inside me steadied, not healed, not smoothed over, but solidified. Victoria's questions guided me, giving structure to the unbearable. Did you want your pregnancy? Yes. Did you ever express to any medical staff that you wished to terminate the pregnancy? No, never. Before going under anesthesia, were you conscious and competent? Yes. Did anyone attempt to speak with you about elective termination? No. What happened when you woke up? I paused, breathing through the shaking in my chest. I asked about my baby, and they told me she was gone. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Victoria continued, unflinching. Karina, did you authorize the termination? No. Did you ever consent? No. Who authorized it? My mother. It came out like a splinter. When Victoria finished, I felt hollow but upright. It wasn't strength exactly, more like momentum. Then came the cross-examination. Margaret's lawyer stood, walked toward me with her hands clasped behind her back, and smiled like she was about to ask me what college I went to. Karina, she began, you were experiencing severe abdominal pain before surgery, correct? Yes. And pain can impair judgment, can it not? I was medicated, not unconscious, I countered. I knew exactly what I wanted. She nodded thoughtfully, continuing her slow prowl. And isn't it true that your mother has supported you throughout your life? She controlled me, I said, the words slipping out before I could soften them. My client, the lawyer continued, voice silky, acted in your best interest. Perhaps she believed this pregnancy was detrimental to your future. I stared at her. She knew I wanted the baby. But she may have feared complications. I leaned forward. If she thought there was a risk, any risk, why didn't she talk to me? Why didn't she wait for me to wake up? Why did she run out of the hospital before the surgery was even done? Silence. Even the judge looked unsettled. David testified next. He described how he begged the doctors not to proceed, how he tried to reach me, how he told everyone that I clearly wanted the pregnancy. Did anyone listen to you? Victoria asked. David shook his head, jaw tight. No, they said I wasn't family. Did you feel powerless? Yes, completely. Margaret's lawyer tried to portray him as emotional and irrational, a boyfriend blinded by immaturity. But then he said something that silenced the entire courtroom. I wasn't trying to make a medical decision, David said steadily. I was trying to stop someone else from making a decision against the mother's will. Even the stenographer paused. Then came the medical staff. Nurse Sandra's voice trembled, but her words were clear. The patient, Karina, was lucid before surgery. She stated she wanted the pregnancy. Her partner confirmed it. Her mother insisted otherwise. I told Dr. Piton something felt wrong. Nurse Kayla followed. I overheard Mrs. Ashbourne saying she was going to fix Karina's mistake. I didn't understand at the time. I wish I had. Dr. Morrison testified, stating unequivocally that there was no medical necessity for termination. When Victoria asked, "Did you believe the pregnancy endangered Karina's life?" he answered, "No." Did anyone ask her consent post-surgery? No. Would a competent patient normally be consulted before an elective procedure? Yes. And was Karina competent before surgery? Yes. Margaret's lawyer tried to shake him, but Dr. Morrison never wavered. Then came Dr. Peaton. He walked to the stand with the stiff dignity of a man who thought the world had misunderstood him. I followed protocol, he insisted. Her proxy consented. Did you speak to Karina directly before performing the procedure? Victoria asked. No, she was in recovery from anesthesia. Did you attempt to wait until she woke up? That is not standard when a proxy indicates medical urgency. Was there medical urgency? Peaton hesitated. Her mother believed there was. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge had to pound the gavel. Victoria pounced. So, you performed an elective procedure, ending a healthy pregnancy, based solely on the word of someone who was not the patient, despite the patient being conscious and capable prior to surgery? Piton's face reddened. I acted within protocol. No further questions. The verdict took 7 hours. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, sandwiched between David and my father, listening to the ticking of a wall clock that seemed too loud. When the jury filed back in, none of them looked at Margaret. They found in my favor on every count. Medical battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, violation of patient rights. Damages awarded, substantial. The hospital had already settled. Dr. Peaton's future was effectively destroyed, and Margaret would lose almost everything she owned to pay the judgment, but she didn't even look shocked. She stared straight ahead, chin lifted in that same cold, superior way she always had when the world refused to bend to her will. My father stood up the next morning and told her he was filing for divorce. I won't spend another day married to someone capable of doing this, he said. I didn't raise Karina to be violated by her own mother. Margaret didn't fight him, because she genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong. That was the part that haunted me the most. Grief doesn't stay loud forever. Eventually, the screaming inside your chest quiets into something else, something heavier, something that sinks into your bones. The trial was over. The judgment was final. My mother's public fall from grace was complete. And yet, every night, when the lights were off and the apartment fell still, I found myself pressing a hand to my stomach, remembering the flutter of hope that had once lived there. The world had moved on, but I hadn't. Not yet. Therapy became a lifeline. Sometimes I went alone. Sometimes David sat beside me, his knee brushing mine, his fingers twisting anxiously in his lap as we learned how to speak about the silence between us. Because trauma doesn't just hit one person. It spreads like smoke through every relationship it touches. More than once, I found him crying quietly in the kitchen at 2 a.m., thinking I was asleep. He would wipe his eyes quickly, pretending it was allergies, pretending he wasn't carrying the guilt of being powerless. I should have protected you, he murmured once, his forehead resting against mine. No, I whispered back. You were the only one who tried. Healing wasn't clean. It wasn't linear. Some days I felt like I could breathe again. Others, the memory of waking up in that hospital bed crashed over me so hard I had to sit on the floor until the trembling stopped. But through all of it, David didn't leave, and neither did my dad. The year after the trial, life didn't magically return to normal. Instead, it built something new out of the broken pieces. David proposed on a quiet Sunday morning. No audience, no elaborate setup, just us in our kitchen, sunlight pouring across the floor. My coffee was still steaming when he slid a small velvet box across the counter. I don't want to fix the past, he said softly. I want to build the future with you. The one we talked about. The one we still deserve. My throat tightened. Yes, I whispered. I want that too. We were married 3 months later in a small garden ceremony. Just family, my real family. My dad, who sobbed openly when he walked me down the aisle. Frank and Diana, who embraced me like I had always been their daughter. Gregory, who toasted me with tears in his eyes. Natalie caught the bouquet on purpose and declared it was a sign. Margaret wasn't invited. The empty seat where she would have sat felt like a wound that had finally scabbed over, not healed, but closed. Not forgotten, but sealed. 7 months after the wedding, I got pregnant again. I didn't tell anyone for 2 weeks, not even David. The fear was too sharp, too familiar, a blade pressed against my ribs. What if it happened again? What if someone took this from me too? But this time, I wasn't naive, I wasn't unprotected, I wasn't alone. I had medical directives drafted by Victoria herself, notarized and filed with every health provider I could find. No one except David could make decisions for me. Not even my father. Not even emergency physicians. There would be no loopholes, no miscommunications, no power for anyone to exploit. When I finally told David, he pulled me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. "Thank you for trusting me," he whispered. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "We'll be terrified together," he said. The pregnancy was harder than the first. Physically, it was normal. My doctors were wonderful, supportive, transparent, but emotionally, every appointment felt like walking back into that pre-op room. Every time a nurse checked my vitals, every time a form was placed in front of me, every time a signature was required, my hands shook. But I did it. Week by week, I pushed forward. At 36 weeks, my therapist asked, "What do you feel when you imagine holding your baby for the first time?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the floor until tears blurred my vision. "Relief," I said quietly. "Relief that they're here, that they're real, that I wasn't too broken to try again." Our daughter, Harper, was born on a warm spring morning. David cried so loudly the nurses teased him. My dad held her with trembling hands, whispering, you're perfect, little one." Frank and Diana arrived with balloons and cookies and enough knitted baby booties to supply a small village. For the first time since the nightmare in that hospital room, my chest felt full again. Not with grief, with joy. Real joy. The kind that doesn't apologize for existing. Margaret found out through distant relatives. She sent a card. White, embossed, sterile. "Congratulations on your daughter. I hope we can move past our differences. I would love to meet my granddaughter." There was no apology. Not a real one. Just an expectation that I would fold, return, pretend she hadn't taken a piece of me and ground it into dust. I sent the card back unopened, with a note. "You lost your right to be a grandmother the day you killed your first grandchild. Stay away from my family." She didn't stop. She came to our house once. I saw her through this peephole, hair unkempt, makeup smudged, hands shaking. She looked nothing like the polished woman who once commanded entire rooms. Now she looked hollow. But I didn't open the door. I called the police. "We have a restraining order," I told the officer. "She is not allowed near us." The officer, a woman who clearly recognized Margaret from the news coverage, nodded with a cold firmness. "Ma'am," she said to my mother outside, "you need to leave, now." Margaret's voice cracked. "My daughter is keeping my granddaughter from me." The officer's expression didn't waver. "You made that choice," she replied flatly. "Not her." They escorted Margaret away as she begged, pleaded, tried to break through the reality she had created for herself. The restraining order was extended for 5 years. Life moved on again. Harper grew. She learned to laugh, then crawl, then walk. She developed an obsession with blueberries and dogs. Every night she curled into David's chest with a content little sigh that made something inside me glow. Frank taught her how to fish in the backyard with a stick. Diana baked her cookies every Sunday. My dad built her a wooden playhouse with tiny shutters and a flower box. And I learned how to breathe again. Not the shallow survival breaths I had lived on after the first pregnancy, but real ones, full and steady. My family, my chosen, rebuilt family, became the foundation Margaret could never be. And Harper grew up surrounded by love. Not manipulation. Not control. Not fear. Love. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit on the couch holding Harper while David slept beside us. I'd stroke her soft hair and whisper, "You're safe. You are safe. You will always be safe." And each time, I repeated it until the words felt true. Until I believed them, too. People think justice feels like triumph, a bright cinematic moment where everything hurt suddenly makes sense. But really, justice feels quieter, heavier, like the last page of a long book closing softly. My life had changed forever, but it didn't end. Instead, it reshaped itself into something new. And so did the world around me. The hospital where everything happened implemented new protocols within months of the verdict. Every patient now had to provide direct consent for any non-emergency procedure, even if a proxy was listed. Nurses were retrained. Surgeons went to mandatory ethics workshops. They started using my case as a teaching example, why proxy power is limited, played on a giant screen, my name included only with permission. Victoria told me 3 other women came forward after hearing my story. Their experiences weren't as extreme, but they involved medical decisions made without their consent. Some won settlements. Others pushed for policy changes. Change was slow, but it was happening. For the first time, my nightmare was helping protect other women from their own nightmares. That mattered. Dr. Peaton wasn't as lucky. The medical board opened a formal investigation into him. He lost his hospital privileges almost immediately. His license wasn't revoked at first. They suspended it, pending review, but the review didn't take long. Performing an elective termination without confirming patient consent? Performing it despite clear indications the patient wanted the pregnancy? Relying solely on a proxy who had demonstrated emotional instability? He was found guilty of multiple ethical violations. His license was permanently revoked. The last I heard, he was working in healthcare administration, far away from operating tables and consent forms. Dr. Morrison, meanwhile, became an advocate for reform. He spoke publicly about what had happened, about the loopholes, about why the rules needed to change. He even sent me a letter once, not apologizing for something he didn't do, but thanking me for giving him the courage to speak up. It was one of the few letters from that time that I kept. As for my father, he rebuilt his life piece by piece. After the divorce, he moved into a small townhouse downtown, modern, bright, filled with bookshelves and sunlight. He started taking long walks again. He reconnected with old friends, and a year after everything, he surprised me by saying he'd been seeing someone. Her name is Louise, he said, almost sheepish. She works at the public library. Louise turned out to be gentle, thoughtful, warm, a woman who baked muffins for no reason and remembered your favorite authors. She didn't try to replace my mother. She didn't try to step into a role. She simply became someone my father could smile with again. Harper adored her immediately. She called her Miss Lou, and Louise knitted her the softest green blanket I'd ever felt. Seeing my dad happy again felt like a rare kind of justice, the kind that doesn't need applause. Margaret, well, time was not kind to her. The judgment emptied her savings. The trial destroyed her reputation. Friends stopped calling. Social clubs removed her from their rosters. She lost her volunteer positions, her status, her place in every circle she once presided over. Even her own sister, my Aunt Veronica, publicly condemned her. My grandmother called her a disgrace. Extended relatives stopped picking up her calls. She moved into a small apartment across town, and according to my dad, she aged 20 years in one. Stress carved lines into her face. Her posture curled inward. Her voice lost its crisp confidence and turned brittle. She developed high blood pressure, anxiety, insomnia. And yet she still said the same thing to anyone who would listen. I don't understand why everyone abandoned me. I was only trying to protect my daughter. That, more than anything else, proved how far gone she was. Because she still saw herself as the hero. Once, just once, I saw her in person. It was at a grocery store. I turned down an aisle looking for cereal, and there she was, standing in front of the shelves, frozen, staring blankly at the boxes like she didn't recognize a single one. Her hair was unstyled. Her clothes hung differently, like she hadn't noticed the weight she'd lost. She looked smaller, faded, like someone had drained the color out of her. For a moment, a flicker, I felt something sharp in my chest. Not pity, but the ghost of what pity might once have been. Then I remembered waking up in that hospital bed. I remembered screaming. I remembered her handwriting on the consent form. The flicker died instantly. I walked past her without a word. She didn't even notice. The last time she tried to reach me was through my attorney. Victoria called one morning and said, "Your mother wrote a letter. It came through legal channels due to the restraining order. Do you want to read it?" My heart didn't race, it didn't sink, it didn't twist, it simply steadied. "What does it say?" I asked. Victoria hesitated. "It's an attempt at an apology, sort of." I almost laughed. "Sort of." She says she understands you were hurt, Victoria clarified. She says she's been in therapy. She says she wants a chance to explain herself. I closed my eyes. Does she apologize for what she did? I asked. Not for how I felt, for what she did. Another pause, longer this time. No, was Victoria said softly. She doesn't. Destroy it, I said. Please. Are you sure? She had 2 years to mean it, I replied. If this is all she can offer now, I don't need it. The letter was shredded that afternoon. I didn't tell David about it right away. I wasn't hiding it. I just needed a moment to process what I had chosen. When I finally told him, he pulled me close and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. You don't owe her anything, he murmured. Not forgiveness, not understanding, nothing. I know, I whispered, but one day Harper might ask. What will you tell her? He asked. The truth, I said, that I had a mother who hurt me deeply, and that I chose to protect myself and her from someone who couldn't be trusted. She'll understand that love needs boundaries. David nodded. Then she'll learn something important. Harper is 3 now. She runs everywhere. She laughs with her whole body. When she hugs you, she clings like you're the only safe place in the world. She knows her papa, my dad, who adores her unequivocally. He built her a second playhouse behind Louise's townhouse and reads her bedtime stories with different voices for every character. She knows Frank and Diana, her other grandparents, who spoil her with baking lessons and Sunday park trips. These are her people, her family, the ones who show up, the ones who choose love, the ones who hold boundaries with grace. She will never know Margaret, and that's not a tragedy. It's protection. Sometimes, late at night, after Harper is asleep, I sit with David on the porch and watch the lights from the city flicker in the distance. I never thought I'd find peace, I admitted once. You did more than find it, he said softly. You built it. Maybe he was right. My mother took something from me that I can never get back. She played God with my body, my future, my child. She committed a betrayal so profound it cracked my world open. But I survived, and in the ashes I grew something new. A life defined not by what was taken from me, but by what I built. A family grounded in trust, in safety, in unconditional love. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes, and I am finally at peace with that.